Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. As the federal government shutdown continues in the United States, the U.S. Senate has now begun voting on a plan to reopen the government. Meanwhile, President Trump ordered air traffic controllers to return to work, warning that those who do not would have their pay substantially docked. South Korea's Navy carried out its first ever fleet-level drill involving 7 warships and 3 aircraft, aimed at boosting operational capabilities. A year-long trade truce between the U.S. and China has now taken effect, as part of their agreement reached during a recent summit between the two countries' presidents in Busan. China also said it'll suspend sanctions on U.S.-based subsidiaries of a South Korean shipbuilder, Hanwha Ocean, for 1 year. We begin this morning in the United States, where the Senate is voting on a legislation to end the federal government shutdown. And with more than 2,000 flights canceled across the United States on Monday, President Donald Trump demanded that air traffic controllers return to work immediately, threatening to cut their pay. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday demanded that air traffic controllers return to work immediately as flight cancellations continued to mount during the ongoing government shutdown. In a post on social media, Trump warned that controllers who failed to report to work would have their pay substantially docked, while those who have stayed on the job during the shutdown would receive $10,000 bonuses. The current shutdown, now in its 41st day, is the longest in U.S. history. Around 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 Transportation Security Administration agents have been forced to work without pay, with many calling in absent due to financial strain or family obligations. The Federal Aviation Administration said last week that between 20 and 40% of controllers were absent at major U.S. airports on any given day. Meanwhile, President Trump told reporters on Monday that a deal to end the shutdown was very good and that he would abide by the agreement, though he noted that some terms might still change. He said that the deal has enough support from the Democrats and will be opening up the country very quickly.
Depends what deal we're talking about, but if it's a deal I heard about, that's certainly, they want to change the deal a little bit, but I would say so. I think based on everything I'm hearing, they haven't changed anything, and we have support from enough Democrats, and we're going to be opening up our country. It's too bad it was.
The comments come as the U.S. Senate on Sunday advanced a House-passed bill designed to reopen the federal government. The proposal would fund the government through January 30th and include a package of 3 full-year appropriations bill. The U.S. Senate on Monday went ahead with a series of votes to lift the government shutdown. Following Senate approval, it would then go back to the House for a vote before being sent to the President to sign. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, following the summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping in Busan 2 weeks ago, the long-awaited truce in the prolonged trade war between the United States and China has now taken effect. The Chinese government also announced that it'll suspend sanctions on U.S.-based subsidiaries of Hanwha Ocean for 1 year. Our Song Yoo-jin has the details.
The heated trade tensions between the world's 2 largest economies appear to be entering a temporary cooling phase. Starting Monday, the United States has halved its fentanyl-related tariffs on Chinese imports from 20% to 10%. President Donald Trump made the announcement aboard Air Force One following his October summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Busan. The agreement finalized the framework set by negotiators in Kuala Lumpur just days before that high-stakes meeting.
I put a 20% tariff on China because of the fentanyl coming in, which is a big tariff. And based on his statements today, I reduced it by 10%, so it's 10% instead of 20%. Effective immediately. I believe he's going to work very hard to stop the death that's coming in.
With this, the overall U.S. tariff rate on Chinese goods will fall to roughly 47% from 57%. In return, Beijing has suspended its new export controls on rare earths for 1 year, critical materials used in electric vehicles, smartphones, and military hardware. It has also suspended retaliatory tariffs on U.S. agricultural products, including soybeans and pork, in response to Washington's fentanyl-related measures. In addition, the two sides have extended their mutual reciprocal tariff suspension for another year, which was due to expire this month.
The main consensus reached during the economic and trade consultations in Kuala Lumpur between China and the United States pertains to the U.S. Section 301 probe measures against China's maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding industries, as well as the extension of the suspension period for reciprocal tariffs.
This has brought good news for South Korea as well. On Monday, China's Commerce Ministry announced a 1-year suspension of sanctions on 5 U.S.-based subsidiaries of Hanwha Ocean. Last month, the ministry had barred Chinese organizations and individuals from doing business with these companies, accusing them of supporting the U.S. government's Section 301 probe into China. 송유진, Arirang News.
Now, as for negotiations between South Korea and the United States, their joint fact sheet is taking longer than expected to finalize, as it has yet to be released after the Korean government said it would come out sometime last week. Now, the paper will likely contain key details on tariff agreements and the nuclear submarine program, following U.S. President Donald Trump's approval for South Korea to build one. For more on this, we're joined today by Chun In-bum, Lieutenant General retired and former commander of South Korea Special Forces. General Chun, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So, from South Korea's perspective, what key security issues do you think must be included in the joint fact sheet?
Well, the fact sheet is supporting the overall joint communique, which is a diplomatic document that explains the agreement and where we are with the alliance. The most important thing, of course, is the reaffirmation of the strength of the Korea-U.S. alliance. That must be included. I think that because many people term that this year's negotiations or meeting was so critical that it's taking a little bit more time, which means there's a lot of prudent thinking going on. So I think that we need to wait and see what happens. But the most important thing that needs to be included is the reaffirmation of the alliance.
Right, and very few countries in the world have nuclear-powered submarines. So if South Korea were to get one, what would that mean for the country's security?
Well, number one, it will significantly increase our deterrent capability. What that means is it will give the Republic of Korea a second strike capability. If the North Koreans were ever to attack and destroy a considerable number of South Korean military capability, it would be nearly impossible to destroy these nuclear-powered submarines. In turn, these submarines will give us the ability to strike back at the North Koreans. As Minister An Gyu-baek has said, it will keep them awake. Another benefit is by developing and manufacturing this nuclear-powered submarine, it's going to boost our economic capability. The reason being is that all the work that's going to go into this, all the knowledge that we will get from the development of a nuclear-powered submarine is going to have secondary effects on our ability to use that for civilian purposes. This will greatly help our knowledge base and support our economy.
Right, and the Trump administration said a nuclear submarine would be built in Philadelphia, but South Korean officials have been questioning the feasibility of building this in an American shipyard. So is it actually unrealistic to build it in the United States? And do you think the two sides can find common ground on this issue?
I think it's natural for President Trump to wish that this nuclear-powered submarine is built in the United States. I assume that he has mentioned the shipyard in Philly, not only is it not adequate, but in order to make it more usable, we would have to invest a great deal of money. And even then, it's uncertain that we would be able to build the submarine there. So, in short, the feasibility is very limited. But I understand why Mr. Trump would want to have that built in the United States. But all of this is something that need to be negotiated. And I think with the goal of mutual interest that we will be able to come to a good conclusion, because for mutual benefit and economics, it's only rational that it should be built in the Republic of Korea.
Right, we'll have to see if they do reach an agreement on that issue. And the EU administration hopes to settle the issue of wartime operational control transfer with the United States before the president's term ends. How should this issue be resolved?
So actually, there's nothing to resolve. Whenever we South Koreans want to have wartime operational control, there's no objection by the United States. The only concern is that will the Republic of Korea be ready to conduct full operational control of its forces? Now, we already have operational control. We already have command of our own soldiers during peacetime and armistice. To extend that to wartime, fine, but it's going to cost a lot of effort and the commitment by the Korean people. So the effort and commitment is the only question that we should be focusing on. So we make it sound as if this is something to be resolved with the United States, but in reality, in my view, it's something that the South Korean people need to realize, that with the transition of operational control, it means a lot of responsibility for the South Koreans. And are we ready to do that?
I see a lot of things to consider. And before I let you go, there are also concerns about potential changes to the size and role of U.S. troops here in South Korea, especially after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the alliance remains focused on North Korea, but also needs some flexibility. What's your take on this?
So let me be very clear. The United States has never said that they will fix their forces on the Korean Peninsula no matter what. But at the same time, the United States has always guaranteed that the mission of U.S. forces in Korea, especially the Combined Forces Command, is focused on deterrence and keeping the peace on the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. So the U.S. position has never changed. It's the only thing that is changing is the understanding by the Korean people. And we need to get accustomed to this idea that if something happens in the Indo-Pacific, that USFK, United States Forces Korea, will get involved one way or the other. To me, that's only natural. I think we should accept this fact and even support it. Once we do that, we don't have to worry about the size of USFK. It can reduce or it can increase, as long as we understand that the United States resolve to help us maintain peace and security is solid.
I see. All right, General. Thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
South Korea's Navy had launched a new task fleet command earlier this year for flexible operations going beyond specific maritime regions. It conducted its first major drill to boost its combat capability. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung was at the site.
Warships going at a speed of 10 knots target an enemy warship located around 8 kilometers away. Water columns splash on the surface of the sea as the ships fire their guns at the same time. This is part of the Navy Task Fleet Command's 3-day drills to enhance operational capabilities. Marking the very first fleet-level maritime maneuver training, the Navy's Task Fleet Command conducted a variety of drills moving across the East and the South Sea. Navy's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fleets operate in the East, West, and South Seas, respectively, whereas the Task Fleet Command, established this February, aims to undertake operations across all maritime regions and even beyond the South Korea's maritime boundaries. The command had only conducted test group and squadron-level exercises until now. 7 warships, including the Aegis destroyer ROK's Cheongjo the Great, and 3 aircraft took part in the first fleet-level exercise, some 70 kilometers east of Pohang. Under simulated scenarios, ROK's Seoe Ryuseongyong detected multiple aircraft operations and missile attacks. After tracking the threats, the vessel ordered other warships to engage in combat and successfully took down the targets with SM-2 missiles.
Through its first fleet-level maneuver exercise, the Task Fleet Command was able to establish an operational posture capable of executing assigned missions anytime, anywhere. It will continue to maintain military readiness with overwhelming combat power, ensuring victory in any contingency.
The command will hold such exercises regularly to strengthen its capability to deal with whatever threats it might encounter. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Pohang.
In other news, a U.S. lawmaker has reintroduced a bill to renew the North Korean Human Rights Act, which expired in 2022. According to the U.S. Congress website, Representative Young Kim, a Republican from California, submitted the measure last Friday with Democrat Ami Berry as co-sponsor. Originally enacted in 2004, the act has been periodically renewed in 2008, 2012, and 2018 to support human rights and freedom in North Korea. Its most recent authorization expired in September 2022. Although the House passed a reauthorization bill last November, the Senate failed to advance its own version. The act promotes humanitarian aid, human rights advocacy, and efforts to expand access to uncensored information for the North Korean people. In a historic first, U.S. President Donald Trump has met Syrian President Ahmad Al-Shara at the White House. Now, this marks the first visit by a Syrian head of state since the country's founding in 1946. Our Pyongyang reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump has met Syrian President Ahmed Al-Shara for closed-door talks, marking the third meeting between the two leaders this year, following their encounters in Saudi Arabia and at the UN General Assembly. After the summit on Monday, President Trump said the U.S. would temporarily lift sanctions on Damascus to help spur reconstruction in the war-torn country.
He's a very strong leader. He comes from a very tough place, and he's a tough guy. I liked him. I get along with him, the new president of Syria. And we'll do everything we can to make Syria successful, because that's part of the Middle East. And we want to see Syria be successful along with the rest of the Middle East.
The summit also comes after decades of frozen relations between Washington and Damascus, which were severed in 2011 when the U.S. imposed sweeping sanctions over the Assad's government's violent crackdown on pro-democracy protests. The two nations have since remained on opposite sides of the Syrian civil war, with Washington backing opposition forces while Damascus turned to Russia and Iran for support. Al-Shara, a former al-Qaeda member once on the U.S. wanted list, broke ties with the group in 2016 and led the overthrow of the Assad regime last year. Washington officials say the meeting reflects a major shift in U.S. policy, with Syria expected to join the U.S.-led coalition against the Islamic State. Experts view the summit as a symbolic turning point, signaling Syria's gradual return to the international stage and a potential realignment in the Middle East order. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
The South Korean government is set to decide this week whether to approve Google's request to export its high-resolution map data. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport says a special committee will meet to determine whether to allow Google access to the data needed for its 1 to 5,000 scale maps, which can display buildings, roads, and alleys in fine detail. Now, this is Google's third attempt to obtain such data, following previous rejections in 2007 and 2016 over national security concerns.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Starting in India, where a car explosion in Delhi has killed at least 10 people and injured more than 30 near the city's historical Red Fort. Authorities say a slow-moving vehicle suddenly exploded near a traffic light close to a metro station by the Red Fort at around 6:40 on Monday evening local time. 6 cars and 3 auto rickshaws caught on fire as flames lit up the area. Police say the cause is still unknown, but they're investigating from every angle. Security has been tightened nationwide with airports, railway stations, and government sites on high alert. The U.S. Embassy is urging citizens to avoid large crowds in Delhi. India's Prime Minister expressed condolences to the victims' families, calling the blast tragic. In the U.S., President Donald Trump has threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion, accusing the British broadcaster of falsely editing a 2021 speech linked to the Capitol riot. Trump's lawyers on Sunday sent a letter demanding the BBC retract its documentary Panorama and issue an apology, saying the edited version made it appear incited violence. The broadcaster admitted the footage was an error of judgment and apologized, but denied systemic bias. The controversy has already forced the resignation of the BBC's Director General and Head of News. The network says it will respond formally to the legal threat while working to restore public trust. Trump's legal team claims the edit caused major reputational damage and violated defamation law. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been released from prison after serving 3 weeks of a 5-year sentence for criminal conspiracy. A Paris court approved his release on Monday as he appeals his conviction, ruling he is not a flight risk. Sarkozy, 70, will remain under judicial supervision. He's barred from leaving France and may have to wear an electronic tag at home. Sarkozy maintains his innocence and says he was a victim of political revenge. Basketball legend Lenny Wilkens, a Hall of Famer as both player and coach, has died at the age of 88. His family says he passed away on Sunday surrounded by loved ones. Wilkens recorded over 1,300 NBA coaching wins and led Seattle Supersonics to its only championship in 1979. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame 3 times and remembered as one of the game's greatest leaders.
Korea is truly a gift from nature nowadays. Everywhere you look, you can enjoy the beautiful golden hues and rich autumn colors. However, yesterday's blue skies came with a serious chill. It was cold yesterday, but this morning was even colder. But despite the harsh start, temperatures will warm up dramatically by the afternoon. But another sign we are getting close to the end of the year here in Korea is the upcoming Suneung Day, the college entrance exam day. Temperatures will be above season norms on a test day, meaning we will fortunately avoid a typical exam cold snap this year. This afternoon, most regions will see highs above 15 degrees Celsius, topping out at just 15 degrees here in Seoul. Daegu, Gwangju will be topping out at 16 degrees under sunny skies nationwide today. The weather gets colder after Suneung Day, and then early next week, we will wake up to a real winter chill. So enjoy the last stage of stunning autumn weather while you can.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.